presiding. All right, please be seated. Well, first and foremost, congratulations for being in the championship round of the Idaho High School mock trial competition. I know what hard work you all put in to be here, so, and you obviously have a big fan club out here. Just a reminder to the scoring judges to fill out your score sheets as you go. So I will now announce the case. The court will now hear the case of the State of Idaho versus Kingsley Ford. Same reminders from the prior rounds. All electronic devices must be silenced. Timekeepers may use their phone stopwatch feature during the round, but must have their phones in airplane and silent modes. No communication is allowed between participating team members and others, including coaches, observers, and non-participating team members until the trial is concluded. Any other cameras or video recording besides the ones we already know about? All right. Looks like the timekeepers are ready. Everyone can see the timekeepers okay? All right, and no courtroom artists in this round? All right, so I'm going to introduce myself and have the judging panel introduce themselves. My name is Jessica Lorello. I am currently the Chief Judge of the Idaho Court of Appeals. Have been involved in mock trial for a long time, and I'm sure you all remember seeing me scoring or presiding in some of the state competition rounds, also the regional rounds here. Big time mock trial fan, and happy to be here.
Hi everybody, congratulations on being here. My name is Edith Pacillo. I'm an attorney here in Boise, and like Judge Lorello, I am a longtime supporter of mock trial.
Hello everybody, I'm Jonathan Bassett. I'm currently finishing up my last semester of law school and will be starting in July as one of Judge Lorello's law clerks. Thank you all for being here.
Zachary Jones, an attorney here in Boise, used to clerk for Judge Lorello. Jonathan's actually replacing me. Also, I helped out with mock trial throughout the years, so I'm excited to be here.
And just for the record, Jonathan is not replacing Zach for any other reason than that our clerks are generally term periods, so Zach was an amazing he was excellent, Jonathan is excellent, Edith is excellent, so. All right, if the teams would now like to introduce themselves by your names and roles only, we will start with Team LBY.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Caroline Brown, and today I will be presenting the direct examination of Adrian Moltisanti, as portrayed by Fiona Bothwell.
Your Honor, members of the jury.
As well as the cross-examination of Kingsley Ford and the closing argument.
Good morning, Your Honor, and members of the jury. My name is Carolyn Fitzgibbons, and I will be delivering the opening statement at the beginning of today's trial, as well as the direct of Kelly Adams, as portrayed by Micah Bennett.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury.
As well as the cross of Tay Sullivan Magnum.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Samara Coleman, and I will be delivering the direct examination of Rowan Pentito, as portrayed by Bryce Kinney.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury.
And I also will be delivering the cross-examination of Dr. Auden Vera.
Our timekeeper today is Audrey Cherry.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury.
And we're Team LBY.
Thank you, Team LBY. Team FPB.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Clive Miller, and my co-counsels and I will represent the defense in today's trial.
Good morning, my name is Zach Atwood.
Good morning, my name is Lily Grauke, and these are our witnesses.
My name is Luke Hughes, and I will be portraying Tay Sullivan Magnum.
My name is Edric Moya, and I will be portraying Kingsley Ford.
My name is Josephine Wyrick, and I'll be portraying Dr. Auden Vera.
All right. Thank you, Team FPB. Looking forward to when we go back to the colors for team names. If all 6 witnesses can stand and raise your right hands. Do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? All right, thank you. You may be seated. Are there any preliminary matters either team wishes to raise at this time?
The prosecution would like to request permission for both teams to move freely about the well.
Permission granted.
In addition, the defense would request that the court take judicial notice of the fact that 25% off $250 is $187.50.
Any objection to that request for judicial notice of math?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Anything else preliminarily? All right. Is the prosecution ready to make its opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed?
You may.
The author Aldous Huxley once famously stated, "Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored." This still holds true today. The truth never changes, and for those willing to find it, it is always present. Today, you will hear of an individual who willfully ignored the truth right in front of him, and how we will prove that this led him to be guilty for a crime. Now, Kingsley Ford was always looking for money. His entire life, he was always looking for that next big venture. Even in childhood, he was looking for ways to make that next dollar, from lemonade stands to door-to-door sales. Now, as he grew older, that characteristic of his didn't abate. He simply started looking for bigger entrepreneurship opportunities. And as he was in his sustainable business class taught by Dr. Auden, one of these million-dollar ideas came along. The idea was for a refurbished computer company. All he needed was the right partner, and he found that partner in Rowan Pentito. Rowan was perfect for him, as he was an expert in building computers, had a hunger for making money, and a willingness to always get the job done. Now, Kingsley's company was ready to start production. He was on top of the world, and nothing could take him down. Nothing, that is, until his inexperience in the business world caught up with him. And he failed to foresee the supply chain issues which COVID-19 would bring onto his company. He would no longer be able to source CPUs, a crucial element in his computers. Now, with orders stacking up in his company, he had to find some way to find these parts. And that is where Rowan's constant changing side jobs came in handy. Rowan was working for Potato Chips, a CPU distributing company. He knew that he needed cheaper chips and jumped at the opportunity to receive them from Rowan. Now, Kingsley Ford knew that in a fluctuating market, there was no way that all those chips could be equally priced. He also knew that Rowan refused to produce receipts for these products, and then he did not follow up on this. Now, the first witness the prosecution will call will be Kelly Adams. Kelly Adams was the supply chain supervisor for Potato Chips, and he will testify today about working at his office in Lewiston, about the chips themselves and how they're transported, and the role of a courier. He will also tell you that no chips were ever sold to Rowan Pentito, Kingsley Ford, or Sophisticated Systems. Now, the next witness that the prosecution will be calling will be Officer Adrian Multisanti. She was the undercover cop which led the investigation against Sophisticated Systems and Kingsley Ford. She will tell you about her time working for this company undercover as an intern and about getting valuable evidence about how this business was run. She gained enough evidence that she was able to secure in her mind that Kingsley could have reasonably induced that the product he was receiving was in fact stolen property. She will testify to the red flags which he ignored while working in his own business. Lastly, the prosecution will be calling Rowan Pentito to the stand. Now, Rowan was just a college kid, like the defendant, Kingsley Ford. And Rowan was a college kid, like Kingsley Ford. They quickly got to know each other through study groups, freshman classes. They were good enough friends that they became business partners, splitting Sophisticated Systems 50-50 and building the company from the ground up together. Now, their roles were split, with Kingsley working with customers and mainly doing paperwork, and Rowan focusing on building computers. Rowan today will testify that Kingsley asked him to get the cheapest possible chips, and that Kingsley asked him to steal. He will also testify to the fact that Kingsley did not inquire about the receipts for the product which Rowan was supplying the company. Now, the defense may try to claim that Kingsley was just a college kid in over his head, but that is not an adequate defense, because what they fail to recognize is that red flags were presented to the defendant, and he willfully ignored them. Today, we will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Kingsley Ford is guilty of knowingly selling stolen computer processing units. Now, the truth never changes and is always present for those willing to look for it. In this case, the defendant didn't look for it. That's why we ask that you side with the prosecution and find him guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Opening for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury, the truth is in the numbers. You will hear today how my client, Kingsley Ford, had a vision. A vision to help our ecosystem by repairing and rebuilding old computers. A vision to help our community by selling these computers at affordable prices to the students in his college town. A vision to build a legacy, a business that had the potential to be worth millions of dollars. And this vision became a reality when my client, Kingsley Ford, and his partner, Rowan Petito, founded Sophisticated Systems, a business which did just that. You will hear today how Sophisticated Systems was an instant success, and profits were through the roof. And my client was able to reinvest this money back into the company, building it closer to the vision that he had. However, you will hear how in 2020, during COVID, Sophisticated Systems faced supply chain issues when sourcing computer chips, finding it difficult to keep up with the rising demand for computers during the online period. However, you will hear how Rowan Petito got a job at Tater Chips, a company which distributed CPUs, or computer chips, the very thing Sophisticated Systems needed. You will hear how Kingsley Ford saw an opportunity where, if Rowan Petito was to purchase chips from Tater Chips using his 25% off employee discount, then Sophisticated Systems could reimburse him for this, both getting a great solution to their problem and a great deal at the same time. It was the perfect plan, and you will hear how Kingsley Ford put this right into action. But you will hear how in the spring of 2022, my client, Kingsley Ford, was arrested. Why? What had he done wrong? You will hear how Rowan Petito was not buying the chips from Tater Chips. Instead, he had stolen and embezzled the money that my client had reimbursed him. The worst part of it was, Mr. Petito had not taken responsibility for his crimes. Instead, he had blamed every single thing he had done on my client, Kingsley Ford, saying that he had coerced him into stealing chips. Members of the jury, the prosecution has the burden of proof today. They must prove beyond a reasonable doubt these 5 aspects of jury instruction 6. But you will hear how only one of these aspects is really disputed today. Did my client know that the chips were stolen, or should he have known that the chips were stolen? To cast doubt on this, we will call our 3 witnesses. Detective K. Sullivan Magnan, Kingsley Ford himself, and his business professor, Dr. Autumn Barrow. First, Detective Magnan will take the stand and tell you about his investigation, how he interviewed Rowan, and concluded through his professional experience that he was lying. Next, Kingsley Ford will take the stand and tell you the tragic story of how Rowan Petito destroyed their business that they had built over 3 years with these stolen chips, and go on to show you the very checks that he reimbursed Rowan for every single chip he thought he was buying. Finally, Dr. Autumn Barrow will take the stand and vouched not only for Kingsley's reputation for honesty and integrity, but also for his business decisions, which she not only sanctioned, but invested in. Members of the jury, the truth is in the numbers. Every single number on every single check that Kingsley Ford reimbursed Rowan Petito for every single chip that he thought he was buying. At the conclusion of this case, it will be evident that the prosecution has failed to meet its burden of proof. And we would ask that you find my client, Kingsley Ford, not guilty of theft of stolen money. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Prosecution ready to call its first witness.
Yes, Your Honor, but before I begin, I would like to say, had I been allowed to object, I would have objected to argumentative on the grounds of the line that he, Rowan, stole the chips and embezzled the money.
All right, thank you. Your objection's noted.
Your Honor, the prosecution calls Kelly Adams to the stand.
All right, Mr. Adams.
Permission to proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Please state your name for the court.
My name is Kelly Adams.
And what is your occupation?
I am the supply chain supervisor at Tater Chips.
And can you tell me a little bit about this company?
Yes, we import and distribute CPUs.
And how long have you been working with Tater Chips?
I've been working at Tater Chips for about 9 years now.
What different roles have you worked in while you've been employed there?
Well, I started out as a courier, and then I became an agent, and then just recently I've become the supply chain supervisor.
And can you tell me a little bit about the role of a courier?
Yes, the courier's job is essentially to pick up our shipments at our shipping port, deliver them to our warehouses to be processed, and then deliver them to our clients.
What is your current role with Tater Chips?
I am the supply chain supervisor, and it's my job to basically manage and track the inventory, to hire new agents and couriers, to manage the agents, and to coordinate our travel logistics with our shipping partners.
And are there any other supply chain supervisors who you work with?
Yes, I work with 2 other supply chain supervisors.
And do all the supervisors have access to all the data inputted into your systems?
Yes, we do. We all have the same access.
And where are Tater Chips offices located?
Well, they started out in Boise, and then they branched out globally.
And where's the office that you work in located?
I work at the office in Lewiston, Idaho.
Can you tell me a little bit about the chips themselves?
Oh, yes, it's this 3x3 gadget with the company logo, insignia, and serial number.
And where's the logo located?
It's located right on the front of the chip.
And where do the chips come from?
We source our chips from places like South Korea and Taiwan.
And how do you know you've received the correct amount of chips from those places?
Well, each box of Tater Chips comes with a packing slip that has a list of serial numbers on them that correspond with each chip that should be in the box.
Let the record reflect that I'm approaching opposing counsel with a clean and unmarked copy of Exhibit 6. Permission to approach the witness?
You may.
Do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
Have you seen something like it before?
I do. I work with these all the time.
What is it?
This is a packing slip.
And how do you recognize it?
Well, again, I work with these all the time, and it's addressed to me, and it does say with bold letters at the top, packing slip.
And to your knowledge, does this appear to be a fair and accurate representation?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I ask that Exhibit 6 be entered into evidence.
Any objection to the admission of Exhibit 6?
Yes, Your Honor, as to the hearsay contained within this exhibit.
Your Honor,
Response?
I respond. Yes. As to Rule 803-6, this is an exception to hearsay, as it is a regularly conducted business activity, therefore it is not hearsay.
Response to the 8036 exception.
Your Honor, I believe insufficient foundation has been laid to whether or not this exact packing slip is a record of a regular conducted activity. No foundation has been laid that this witness has actually seen this specific packing slip, and therefore I do not believe it qualifies for this exception.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
Your Honor, the foundation has been laid that Kelly Adams does work directly with packing slips with every box that comes with a packing slip, and that a packing slip is always included, therefore it's regularly conducted, and it's irrelevant whether or not he has seen this particular one, because it's still a regularly conducted act of business.
I think that sufficient foundation has been laid for the admission of Exhibit 6, so the objection is overruled, and absent any other objection, the exhibit will be admitted.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, would these packing slips ever leave the facilities?
No, they should have no reason to.
And would chip boxes ever arrive without these packing slips?
Very occasionally.
And would you notice if one was missing?
Yeah, normally we would notice.
Would anyone outside of your office have any reason to have one?
No, I don't see any reason.
Objection, Your Honor. This question calls for speculation.
Response?
Your Honor, this is rational based on this witness's personal perception, as he works directly with these packing slips and would have knowledge of who has access to them.
Your Honor, despite the fact that he may have knowledge about who generally has access to them, he cannot testify as to whether or not there is any way that someone else, or any reason that someone else might have access to a packing slip. As in, someone could have taken a packing slip, or a packing slip could have been displaced. He cannot say whether or not there's any reason that they should not be anywhere else.
I'll allow the witness to testify limited to his personal knowledge on whether any packing slips have been missing, but not whether one in fact has gone missing, that he cannot speculate on that.
I will repeat the question. And would packing slips ever leave the facilities?
In general, they should not.
And would anyone else have access to them?
No, not really.
And did you hire anyone while you were in the position of supply chain supervisor?
Yes, I did. I hired a Rowan Pentito.
And when did you hire Rowan?
I hired him in February of 2021.
And did you have any issues with Rowan after you started working for your company?
Yes, I did receive a complaint from a client who was missing 8 chips from their order that Rowan was overseeing.
And what did this complaint prompt you to do?
I decided to meet with my other 2 supervisors and do an inventory dig between the dates of March 2021 and September of 2021.
What do you do when you have missing chips?
Normally, the supervisors and I compile a list of info about the missing processors.
And did you do that in this case?
Yes, we did.
And did you find anything unusual in this inventory audit?
Yes, we discovered that there was a total of 42 chips missing within this range of dates.
And do you know who the main courier of the 42 missing chips was?
Yes, the main courier of these chips that were stolen was Rowan.
And do you know how many orders Rowan stole from?
There was a total of 15 orders, and 10 of them belonged to Rowan.
And did you turn over any information about these missing chips to the police?
Yes, we compiled a list of info, and then we gave them over to police for their investigation.
Now, did you approach Rowan about the thefts?
I did. I called him into my office to confront him about this.
And what was Rowan's response to your charge?
Well, he admitted to me that he did steal these processors and that his business partner had forced him to take them.
Objection, Your Honor, as to hearsay.
Your Honor, may I respond? Yeah. Your Honor, this is not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. Rather, it is just going to show the subsequent action of Kelly Adams and the effect it had on him hearing this from his employee.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
At issue in today's case, one of the aspects of Jury Instruction 6 is whether or not these chips were stolen. As the statement goes directly to show that, I believe that it is for the truth of the matter asserted.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
Though the prosecution will, at the end of the day, be proving that fact, this is not the time we are asserting that is true. We are simply saying that that is what Kelly Adams heard, and it is the reason Kelly Adams then decided to make subsequent actions.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Briefly.
In addition, one of the issues in today's case is whether or not my client, Kingsley Ford, knew that these chips were stolen, as this section of hearsay included a statement at the end that said that Rowan's business partner made him do it. I believe that this is also for the truth of the matter and has no bearing on Mr. Adams' subsequent actions.
And it's my understanding from your objection and your follow-up comments that you're just objecting to that last part of the statement, and I will sustain the objection as to that part.
Your Honor, I ask that this testimony be stricken from the record.
That part of the testimony will be stricken.
But Rowan did admit to stealing.
Yes, he did admit to the theft.
And when was this?
This was October of 2021.
And when did he first learn of sophisticated systems?
It was during this confrontation that I learned of Rowan's business.
And what did he do after Rowan had admitted to stealing?
Well, I had to fire him on the spot and then file a police report immediately.
And do you have any record of chips ever being sold to Rowan Pizza?
No, there's no record of Tater Chip selling any merchandise to Rowan.
Do you have any record of chips ever being sold to Kelly, to Kingsley Ford?
Nope, no record of any merchandise sold to Kingsley either.
Or Sophisticated Systems?
Not even Sophisticated Systems.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Ford. Sorry, Mr. Adams.
Good morning.
Now, today we heard in their opening Ms. Fitzgibbons talk a little bit about the financial state of Mr. Rowan Petito at the time of the thefts. Since you were Rowan's boss, I would like to clarify a couple things with the jury. You hired Rowan as a courier, correct?
I did. I did hire Rowan as a courier back in February.
Couriers get paid quite a good salary, don't they?
Yes, a monthly salary.
In fact, this salary is so good that many college students are willing to drive all the way from Moscow to Lewiston every time they want to work, correct?
Yeah, the ambitious college students would do that.
Now, moving on, Mr. Adams, I'd like to talk about some of the specifications of your company. You give all your employees at Peter Chips a 25% off discount, correct?
That's correct. All of our employees have a 25% discount.
And Mr. Adams, the chips on the lower end of the price range cost $250, correct?
Roughly, yeah.
Now, Mr. Adams, as a supply chain supervisor, you should know that 25% off $250 is $187.50, correct?
I can't do the math in my head.
That's okay, Mr. Adams. Now, we heard a little bit about a confrontation that happened between you and Rowan Petito. But isn't it true that Rowan Petito had already gone to an attorney before he confessed to you about the thefts?
I don't believe I was aware that he had an attorney. He might have, but I'm not entirely sure.
So is it your testimony today that you were not aware that Rowan Petito had gone to an attorney?
I don't remember personally if he did.
Your Honor, I ask that, of course, the witness their testimony to refresh their memory.
You may, if you can just show opposing counsel the page that you will be referring to, and let me know as well.
Line number?
179.
What's the page number, counsel?
Page number 10, lines 177 through 180. Now, directing your attention to those lines, can you please read that sign? Now, Mr. Ford, or sorry, Mr. Adams, isn't it true that Mr. Petito had already gone to an attorney at the time of the second confrontation?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, as this question is calling for knowledge gained through hearsay.
I can't tell that that's the case based on the question that was asked. So I don't know if you have a response to that, counsel, to the objection.
Your Honor, this question was not calling for the witness to testify in any sort of hearsay, rather on personal knowledge.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
Your Honor, no foundation has been laid that Mr. Adams had any contact with any attorney. Therefore, all of his information would be coming through Rowan, which would be then knowledge gained through hearsay, and it is being asserted for the truth of the matter.
At this point, I don't see that the witness is asked to relay a statement, and the way I'm understanding the question is asking for personal knowledge, so I'll overrule the objection.
Mr. Adams, isn't it true that Mr. Petito had already gone to an attorney before he had confessed to you, correct?
That is what the officer told me, yes.
Now, Mr. Ford, isn't it also true that this was actually the second time you had confronted Rowan about the thefts?
This was yes, this was the second one, yeah.
And Rowan had actually lied to you in the first conversation, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Moving on, Mr. Adams, I'd like to talk about the defendant, Kingsley Ford. Do you know Kingsley Ford?
No, I do not.
Has he ever come to Tater Chips?
No, he has not.
You've never had any interaction with the defendant?
I've never had any interaction with Kingsley Ford.
Now, Mr. Adams, we learned that you are a supply chain supervisor. And one of your jobs as supply chain supervisor is to make sure that chips don't get stolen. Isn't that right?
I don't believe that's what I said, but I guess in general, yes, every supervisor, they don't want their product being stolen by their employees.
So let's talk about the consequences of these steps in your career. You learned that Mr. Pentito was given immunity for his crimes, correct?
Yes.
And this puts you on thin ice with your supervisors, right?
Yes, it is quite unfortunate that I am in this position, but I couldn't really do much about it.
And Mr. Adams, you're here today so that justice may be served, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
But isn't it true that you don't care who gets held accountable as long as someone else does, correct?
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Thank you, counsel. Is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Permission to proceed? Mr. Adams, is there a max number of chips employees could buy with that employee discount?
Objection, Your Honor. This is outside the scope of the cross.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
Your Honor, this is within the scope of the cross as this attorney did question my witness about the employee discount and about how much they would cost. So this is, I'm just clarifying.
I do think it is within the scope of cross, as that was the discount and the ability to buy chips was covered. So I
Yes,
will overrule the objection.
Permission, please?
You may.
I'll restate the question. And was there a max amount of chips employees could buy with this employee discount?
No, we had no set limit.
And you believe in justice, is that right?
I do believe in justice.
And is that why you don't care who gets held accountable?
No.
But you want justice to be served?
I do want justice to be served.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
All right, thank you. Any recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. May this witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
No objection.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Next witness for the prosecution.
Prosecution calls Adrian Moltisanti to the stand.
May I proceed?
You may.
Please introduce yourself to the court.
My name is Adrian Moltisanti, and I was born and raised in New Jersey.
And what is your occupation?
Like my pops before me, I took the path of the blue. I am currently a detective at the Idaho State Police Department.
What experience do you have in the field of law enforcement?
I spent 5 years as a traffic control officer and became a detective a little over 2 years ago.
And what sort of cases have you worked as a detective?
My case assignments mostly include white-collar type stuff, like bank fraud and other financial crimes. Through these cases, I've learned to take very accurate inventory, and I've gained a lot of experience investigating every corner of the crime.
And as part of that, have you ever had to deal with financial documents?
Yes, that is exactly what white-collar cases are about, financial documents. These cases are financial crimes, so it's all evident in the documents. I have to go through a lot of paperwork, and I mean a lot.
Do you have any other experience in the field of law enforcement?
Yes, I went to Post Academy, which stands for Police Officers Standards and Training, and I did spend 4 years in the Navy.
And what training did you receive at Post Academy?
Post Academy is where I received most of my training in interrogation tactics, which included eye contact, body language, and voice analysis.
Let's talk about how your investigation started. When did you first hear about this case?
I got a call from the Moscow police, and Rowan, his attorney, came into my office. They filled me in on the whole story, and the case was handed over to me. I was deemed lead investigator.
Did you interview Rowan?
I did.
And what did you make of Rowan's story?
Over time, through my extensive experience and all my work in Post Academy, I deemed that Rowan was a credible witness, but I did verify his story.
What did you do based on this belief?
I interviewed Kelly Adams and clarified that there were no chips ever sold to Sophisticated Systems or to Rowan, and that there were chips actually missing from Rowan's shipments.
What was the next step in your investigation?
All I knew was I had to investigate further. I suggested an undercover operation to my chief, and it was approved.
And why was it necessary to go undercover?
I did have to see that the chips were actually being sold in the computers, plus in order to investigate every corner of the crime, you got to go to every corner.
So how'd your undercover operation begin?
Rowan got Kingsley to hire me as an intern at Sophisticated Systems.
What did you do as an intern?
Right off the bat, I suggested to Rowan I could help organize the garage, and I did this so I could get a better look at all the inventory. He was up for it.
And did you work alongside Ford this whole time?
Yes, throughout my whole undercover operation, I was working alongside Ford.
And what roles did Ford and Rowan have in Sophisticated Systems?
In the beginning of me working there, Ford was working with all the paperwork and taking care of selling the computers, while Rowan was putting the computers themselves together. But over time, that did change.
How so?
Rowan stopped showing up to work. To my knowledge, he was dropping the computer chips and different stuff off of the front porch. Ford would bring them in, and we had to put the computers together ourselves.
Did you ever talk to Ford about the parts he used in his company?
I did. He was reluctant to really tell me much. He really just said that he didn't care where the chips were coming from as long as Rowan kept them coming, and that was really it.
Did you think his response was odd?
The real odd thing was that he clammed up.
Objection, Your Honor. This is a leading question.
You may.
My witness is free to answer yes or no and explain her reasoning. I'm simply asking if she thought this response was odd, and she's able to answer yes or no.
Anything further?
I would stand on my previous objection, Your Honor.
Okay, overruled.
Would you like me to restate the question?
Yes, please.
Did you think his response was at all strange?
Like I was saying, the really weird thing was that he clammed up every time I asked him about the pots. It seems like an odd thing to me to avoid answering about that subject.
Objection, Your Honor. This is speculation. Officer Moltisanti is testifying to Mr. Ford's state of mind as to his intentions in avoiding questions.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
My witness is not stating what Kingsley's intentions were. He's simply using his experience and expertise he has in stating what he perceived to be his response. He's simply stating why he thought, based on Rule 701, why he thought the way he thought that it was odd, his response.
The objection is overruled. I understood the question asked was his opinion on the conduct rather than what the defendant was thinking.
Had you finished your response?
I had, yes.
So did you ever actually see Kingsley sell a laptop?
Not only did I see him sell countless laptops, he sold one of them to me. He sold me this vomit-looking laptop with a Tata chip inside of it, which I later confirmed it did in fact have one. I knew because of the insignia on it, and there was a serial number, which I took note of.
And when did he sell you this laptop?
I believe it was in March of 2022.
What evidence did you gather when you arrested Kingsley?
Well, I got a warrant approved, and as the lead investigator, I oversaw the inventorying of the whole garage. We collected countless financial documents and other pieces of evidence, which included a Tata Chips packing slip.
I believe Exhibit 6 is in front of you.
It is.
Could you tell the jury what Exhibit 6 is?
It is the packing slip that we seized from Sophisticated Systems.
And how do you recognize it?
It is one of the things that we seized from the whole inventory of the garage.
And who does this slip belong to?
It says right here in this section that it belongs to Kelly Adams for Tata Chips.
And who's it addressed from?
Again, in the same section, from Taiwan.
Were you expecting to find Tater Chips paperwork at Sophisticated Systems?
No, I was not expecting to find any of this type of paperwork at Sophisticated Systems.
Was there any other significance to this document?
Yes, the serial number, which I took note of in the computer that Kingsley sold me, matches up with the serial numbers listed on here in this packing slip.
Let's talk about your time after your undercover investigation. What were your findings after being undercover?
Overall, Kingsley admitted that there was Tata Chips inside the computers that he was selling. It was clear that no chips were ever sold to Sophisticated Systems or to Rowan. That's from my interview with Kelly Adams and from the seized documents. And Kingsley was working with the paperwork the whole time I was there. There's just quite a few red flags.
You testified that you went through the paperwork while Ford was there. Did you ever see any CPU receipts at this time?
No, we didn't see any receipts.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. But before I begin, I ask that I be allowed to approach the witness with what has been marked as Exhibit 1.
To show it to opposing counsel, you may approach.
Thank you.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Good afternoon, Detective.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to start by talking about this exhibit here. You recognize this, don't you?
1 moment. I do, yes.
This is the inventory of missing chips you received from Kelly Adams, right?
Yeah, it's all the information I put together from stuff Kelly Adams gave me.
And you collected this as part of your regular investigation, right?
It is part of a regular white-collar case investigation to do stuff like this.
And to the best of your knowledge, this is an accurate copy of that exhibit?
It does appear to be one.
Your Honor, the defense moves to enter Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection to the admission of Exhibit 1?
Yes, Your Honor, as to hearsay. This is an out-of-court statement being given for the truth of the matter asserted.
May I respond, Your
You
Honor?
may.
Subject to Rule 8036 of the Mock Trial Rules of Evidence, this is a record of a regularly conducted activity. As Officer Moltisanti just testified, she collected this in the course of her investigation as a police officer.
I don't feel that there has been enough foundation laid that this is a regularly created document, since Kelly Adams never specifically talked about having created one of these usually, and this witness would not have any knowledge as to the usual proceedings of Tater Chips.
Anything further?
Your Honor, this is not a record of Tater Chip's activities. This is rather a record of Officer Moltisanti's activities as a police officer.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
I believe Exhibit 1 is a record of Tater Chips' activities, since it's a record of chips that were controlled by Tater Chips or missing from Tater Chips. So this officer would still not have any knowledge as to the inside workings of Tater Chips.
And it's my understanding that this document, as I heard the witness's testimony, was prepared by Mr. Adams. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, and is it your position that it's because it was attached to a police report it satisfied 8036?
Your Honor, Detective Moltisanti testified that this was collected in the course of her investigation.
All right. I'm going to sustain the objection. I don't think it's admissible under 8036.
Your Honor, may I lay more foundation?
You may try, yes.
Now, officer, at the top of that exhibit there, that's your name, isn't that right?
It's a couple lines down, but yes, that is my name.
And it's under lead investigator, right?
I was the lead investigator in this case, so yes.
And at the top there, it says that it's for today's case, right?
It is for today's case.
So this exhibit was created by Kelly Adams for today's case, right?
Yeah, I didn't, it was created by Kelly Adams, and it was for today's case, but it was just collected by me.
Your Honor, the defense offers Exhibit 1 into evidence.
I re-raise my hearsay objection, since I still feel that even though this witness may have knowledge of this document, he cannot testify as to the numbers created by Kelly Adams and whether or not they fall under the regularly conducted course of business exception.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
Detective Moltisanti testified that this was created and collected for Officer Moltisanti's investigation, and that this was done in the course of a regular activity as a police officer.
May I respond, Your Honor? This document, if it was created for this case, is not something that is regularly done by Tater Chips. So I still feel that, and even if it was, this witness does not have knowledge of that. So this exception still does not hold.
Anything further?
Yes, Your Honor. This is not a record of Tater Chip's activities, but rather what Officer Moltisanti regularly does in collecting exhibits and records of this kind.
All right. I'm going to sustain the objection. I don't know that the witness can lay foundation for the contents of the document.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Detective, I'd like to zoom out for just a moment. As a police officer, it's your job to put criminals behind bars, right?
After I go through the proper way of doing so, yes, I have to go through investigations and find proper evidence. That is true.
And, Detective, whatever you can do to get a criminal behind bars, you're going to do it, right?
Within the law, of course, because I am a detective and police officer. I try to get every criminal I can off the streets.
And you're aware that Mr. Pentito stole chips from Data Chips, right?
I am aware.
You're also aware that these chips are worth thousands of dollars, right?
I did not know the prices of these chips, no.
But you are aware, officer, this was worth quite a lot of money, correct?
I believe that is the case.
But Mr. Pentito, officer, is not going to be put behind bars for his thefts, will he?
I do not believe, or I do not quite know what is going to happen after this trial. All I know is he has immunity for this trial.
That's right, officer. Your office worked an immunity agreement with Mr. Pentito, right?
It was the higher-ups position. It wasn't quite my doing, and I don't quite know how the immunity agreement was worked out. It was between the attorney and all my higher-ups.
So that's a yes, this immunity was granted to Mr. Pentito?
It was a granted, yeah.
Now, the purpose of granting this immunity, officer, was to get a conviction in today's case, correct?
Your Honor, this is speculation. My witnesses just testified that he was not the one who organized this immunity, so he can't testify as to the exact purpose or the exact details of this immunity agreement.
Response?
Your Honor, as Officer Moltisanti works in this office, you should be well aware of why this immunity was granted.
But the objection is overruled.
Officer, you're aware why this immunity was granted, aren't you?
To my knowledge, I believe it was that Rowan testified today in court. However, again, I did not set it up, and nor did I have any play in the immunity agreement itself.
So that's a yes, you're aware why this immunity was granted?
To my knowledge, I have a bit of it that he did testify in court today.
And you're aware that this immunity was granted so that Mr. Pentito could help you get a conviction in today's case?
Not just me, just for justice to be served, and he has a very, in my opinion, a very valuable testimony today.
So that's a yes, and this was granted to help get a conviction today?
I believe that was the case.
Now, officer, Mr. Ford is the one being convicted in today's case, being charged.
As he is on the defense, yes.
So at the time this immunity was granted, Mr. Ford was planning on being charged, right?
I, again, was not taking part in the immunity agreement. I don't know exactly when it was granted, so I can't testify as to the time and whereabouts of this.
So, Detective, you have no idea when this immunity was granted at all, right?
I don't have the exact time. I know about the time it was.
Now, this was before you investigated Mr. Pentito, right?
Yes, it was worked out with the attorney and, again, higher-ups, and I assume some other court. It worked out that immunity agreement.
Just to make that very clear, before you interviewed Mr. Pentito, he already had immunity, right?
Again, I don't quite know the whole idea of the immunity agreement, so I believe that was the case.
Now, I'd like to talk about that interview that you had with Mr. Pentito. You recognized in this interview that Mr. Pentito had another reason for testifying to you, right?
I didn't know of any other reason precisely that he had, as I don't really know his thoughts.
Officer, as part of your conclusion of Mr. Pentito's investigation, you saw that Mr. Pentito was trying to throw Mr. Ford under the bus. Isn't that right?
Objection, Your Honor, this is speculation. My witness is being asked to testify to the mindset and the goals of Mr. Pentito, which she cannot fully do.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
Subject to Rule 705 of the Mock Trial Rules of Evidence, an expert may give an opinion without testifying to the underlying facts or data, but may on cross-examination be required to give those facts or data. Officer Moltisanti has testified as to the conclusion of her interview with Mr. Pentito, and this goes to establish the facts on which she based that conclusion.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm simply responding that this witness still cannot testify as to the exact mindset of Rowan Pentito, which still holds true under the expert rules.
I didn't understand the question to be asking about an opinion as compared to an observation of what Rowan was doing in the interaction with Detective Moltisanti, unless I misunderstood your question.
Yes, Your Honor. I asked Officer Moltisanti what she concluded about Mr. Bentito's intentions.
Okay. If that's your question, I will sustain the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. So, Ms. Officer Moltisanti, you testified that this examination was full and thorough, right?
I try to take all of my investigations and all my different interviews to be as thorough as I can.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor, but first I'd like to inquire as to the time remaining.
You have about 8 minutes left.
Okay. Ms. Moltisanti, how long was your investigation for?
I think it was just over 7 months.
And do you believe you came to the truth?
I tried to do so in all of my different investigations, and to my knowledge, I believe I did.
And to your knowledge, does Kingsley have to be convicted for Rowan to get immunity?
I do not know the exact agreements of the immunity, but I believe that Rowan just has to testify in court today.
And do you have control over who gets immunity?
No, I do not. I don't have any control over that. I am simply a detective that is a higher-ups and I believe a court's decision, along with the attorney of Rowan.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
All right. May this witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
No objection.
Thank you. Next witness for the prosecution.
Yes, Your Honor, the prosecution calls Rowan Pentito to the stand. Before I begin, might I inquire as to the time remaining?
You have 15 seconds, or 7 minutes and 15 seconds.
15-second direct. Permission to proceed, Your Honor. Please state your name and occupation for the court.
My name is Rowan Pentito, and I'm a college student.
Where did you go to school?
I attend the University of Idaho.
Are you acquainted with the defendant in today's case, Kingsley Ford?
Yes, I am.
How did you two meet?
We met in some of our first classes in our freshman year of college.
What sources of income did you have while attending the University of Idaho?
Well, I spent 2 separate semesters working as a tutor for college students at the University of Idaho, and I also spent several weeks working at the school's cafeteria. And Kingsley offered for me to join his newly founded business, what would eventually become Sophisticated Systems.
Now, can you please describe to the jury what exactly this business proposition entailed?
Yeah, Kingsley suggested creating a sustainable business that was solely focused on creating refurbished laptops that we would sell to college students. I was majoring in computer science and was good at building computers from scratch, essentially.
And did you accept Kingsley's offer?
Kingsley's offer intrigued me. I just folded my first private tutoring job and had spent a little bit working at a low-paying job at the school's cafeteria, so I wanted to accept another stream of income. I always try to keep my options open.
And what were the sales like after you two started the business?
Sales skyrocketed after the business started, but Kingsley insisted on directing all profits back into the company.
And did you guys experience any difficulties running Sophisticated Systems during the pandemic?
Yeah, the computer chip industry suffered severe supply chain issues.
What supply chain issues did Sophisticated Systems face?
Well, the drop in the market mixed with very high demand caused computer chips to be very difficult to source. And this made it very hard for us to make any sort of income because we couldn't build enough computers to sell.
So how did you respond to this financial stress?
Well, my computer science professor heard about my predicament and actually arranged for me to get a potential job opportunity at Tater Chips working as a courier.
Did you take this job?
I mean, Kingsley wasn't paying me anything, so yeah, I needed to accept some form of actual income.
And to your knowledge, did Kingsley ever find out about your side gig with Tater Chips?
Yes, and once he did, in my opinion, it seemed like all he wanted to do was just use it for his own personal benefit.
Objection, Your Honor, this is speculation.
I'm sorry, I did not hear the answer.
Mr.
Or
Pentito just testified as to Mr. Ford's motives and why he's excited that Mr. Pentito got this job, and that is speculation.
Response.
Yes, Your Honor. According to Rule 602, they have personal knowledge of whether or not the news reached Ford that they had an additional job with Tater Chips, and also according to Rule 701A, this opinion is rationally based on their perception.
Regardless of that, Your Honor, Mr. Pentito testified to Mr. Ford's mental state, his emotional state, and as to why he was excited about why he got that job.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
This information is being admitted in the form of an opinion and not as a material fact, and according to Rule 701A, this opinion is rationally based on their perception, and they are able to testify to that.
Anything further on the objection?
I stand on my objection, Your Honor.
All right, the objection is overruled.
Would you like me to restate the question?
Please.
To your knowledge, did Kingsley ever find out about your side gig with Tater Chips?
Yes, and in my opinion, once he did, he just wanted to use my job for his own personal benefit.
Mr. Pentito, what did Kingsley do after he found out about your job as a courier?
Well, immediately after I told Kingsley about my job at Tater Chips, he suggested that I start stealing chips from the deliveries I was making as a courier.
To be clear, Kingsley told you to steal?
Yes, he did.
Did you want to steal the chips?
No, I was reluctant.
So why exactly did you decide to steal?
Well, faced with a crushing debt, I found myself becoming a pawn in Kingsley's conniving game. And Kingsley did something I never expected him to do, which was to actually pay me to steal chips through sophisticated systems. And afterwards, I was planning, once things had gotten better, I was planning on repaying Tater Chips for all the chips that I had stolen from them.
And how did Kingsley Ford pay you?
He paid me through what he called reimbursement checks.
And did Kingsley Ford make any written statements on these checks?
Yeah, he wrote in the memo of each check what they were meant for.
Let the record reflect that I am approaching opposing counsel with a clean and unmarked copy of what was previously marked as Exhibit 2. Permission to approach the witness?
You may.
Do you recognize these?
Yes, I do.
What are they?
These are the checks that Kingsley gave me to steal chips.
And to your knowledge, does this appear to be a fair and accurate representation of the checks you received from Kingsley?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I ask that Exhibit 2 be admitted into evidence.
Any objection to the admission of Exhibit 2?
I have no objection, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 2 will be admitted without objection.
May you please read the memo under the fifth and last check in this exhibit?
Yes, it says TC reimbursement.
Why were you issued these checks?
Well, as I said before, it was Kingsley's method of paying me to steal chips from Tater Chips.
And did you deliver the stolen chips to Kingsley Ford?
Yes, I did.
Did you deliver chips past August?
Yes, and I was paid for all the chips I delivered past August.
Did you ever think about telling your supervisor, Kelly Adams, that you stole?
Well, actually, Kelly approached me in September of 2021 about the whole situation, but it wasn't until October that I made clear to him what was actually going on.
And how did you go about exploring your options?
Well, I ended up contacting a local attorney, and she ended up leveraging my inside knowledge of the processor thefts for immunity with the government.
And did anyone contact you after you finalized your immunity agreement?
Yes, Adrian Moltisanti did.
Who is Adrian?
She's a law enforcement officer.
And what plan did you guys come up with?
Well, ultimately, we decided that the best course of investigation was to go undercover. Adrian decided she would go undercover into sophisticated systems as an intern so that she could gather the best evidence possible for her investigation.
And finally, Mr. Pentito, why are you testifying against Kingsley Ford today?
Well, I made mistakes, and honestly, I'm willing to accept the consequences to those actions that I made. But Kingsley hasn't been punished for anything, and as far as I could tell, Kingsley was the ringleader behind the entire processor theft scheme. I just feel that it wouldn't be just if Kingsley isn't punished. It is just if I were to be punished, but not just if he weren't.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Good morning, Mr. Pentito. I'm going to ask you some questions. Now, we've just heard about your process for stealing the tater chips. At the time, you were an employee of Tater Chips, correct?
I was an employee of Tater Chips for a time, yes.
So you were being paid a salary by Tater Chips, right?
I did receive a salary from them, yes.
And as you heard Kelly Adams testify, it's quite a good salary, isn't it?
It was a decent salary, I will admit.
And at this time, you were also being paid by Mr. Ford, weren't you?
I was paid to steal chips from Mr. Ford, yes.
But you were paid by Mr. Ford during this time, right?
Yes, through checks.
And you were aware of your 25% off employee discount with Tater Chips, right?
Yes, as was Kingsley.
But you didn't repay the stolen Tater Chips, did you?
I was waiting until the company got onto a more solid stance before I would start repaying Tater Chips for the chips I had stolen. I still had a $50,000 loan to repay.
But bringing you back to my question, Mr. Pentito, you didn't repay the stolen Tater Chips, did you?
Well, it wouldn't make sense if I'm stealing the chips for Ford and then paying sophisticated systems for the chips that he's wanting me to steal when I'm purposefully being paid to steal the chips.
So that's a yes to my question. You didn't repay the stolen Tater Chips, did you?
I hadn't gotten to it yet. I just hadn't received enough of a stable income to start paying for them.
Now, eventually, you realized you were going to get caught, didn't you?
Once Kelly Adams approached me about the missing chips, I did realize the whole mess I'd gotten myself into.
But the first time Mr. Adams confronted you, you didn't confess, did you?
I will admit that I didn't tell him what was going on the first time he met with me, and that is unfortunate, but I did ultimately confess out of my own will later on.
So that's a yes to my question. You didn't confess to Mr. Adams?
Not in September, but I did in October.
So after this first confrontation, you didn't go to the police, did you?
I tried to figure out how to handle the situation I was in. I mean, it was just such a big mess. I just didn't know what to do.
So you didn't go to the police?
I first went to an attorney to try and see what could be done.
That's right. You paid this attorney to get you out of this mess, didn't you?
Yeah, my parents had to help me out with that, but I did ultimately, through their help, I ended up paying for a local attorney to help me out, yeah.
Now, you worked an immunity agreement with this prosecutor, didn't you?
I worked out an immunity agreement, I had talked to my attorney about what was going on, and she ultimately worked out an immunity agreement with the government. I wasn't ever directly involved with the negotiations that went on with that.
So that's a yes to my question. You got an immunity agreement?
I did ultimately receive an immunity agreement, yes.
And the terms of your immunity stipulate that you have to testify against Mr. Ford, don't they?
I had to testify in today's case or any trial related to it, and I also had to help with any investigation that was led in sophisticated systems.
So if you give this prosecutor, Mr. Ford, they won't charge you for your thefts, right?
Objection, Your Honor. This requires the witness to speculate.
Response?
Your Honor, this is reasonably based off of the witness's perception of the stipulations of his immunity.
Anything further?
Your Honor, I believe that this witness has testified that they weren't the one who organized the immunity agreement, and so no foundation has been laid that this witness would have specific knowledge as to the course of actions that would follow if there is a conviction in this case.
I think the question went to the, as counsel stated, the witness's understanding of the agreement, so the objection is overruled.
Would you like me to re-ask that, Mr. Computer?
Please.
If you give this prosecutor, Kingsley Ford, they won't charge you for your thefts, right?
I believe the ultimate decision that will be made through my immunity agreement is that I won't be sent to jail for the process of thefts. Doesn't mean I'm not going to be affected in any other way from bankruptcy and stealing chips from a company.
But Mr. Pentito, you don't face any legal consequences for your thefts, right?
I don't believe I'll face any legal consequences, no.
Thank you, Mr. Pentito. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Any redirects?
Yes, Your Honor, but might I ask as what time there is remaining?
15 seconds.
1 minute and 10 seconds.
Permission to proceed, Your Honor? To be clear, was the immunity agreement your idea?
No, it wasn't.
And what were the checks for?
The checks that Kingsley gave me were for me to steal chips. It was his payment to me.
And Mr. Petito, after Kingsley told you to steal, did he divulge any additional information as to the reimbursement checks?
Objection, Your Honor, this is a leading question.
Response?
Your Honor, I don't believe that this is a leading question. This witness is still free to answer yes or no to my question. Did Kingsley divulge any additional information as to the reimbursement checks?
I agree. The objection is overruled.
Mr. Petito, after Kingsley told you to steal, did he divulge any additional information as to the reimbursement checks?
Yeah, Kingsley told me that he would write off the checks as a business expense so that he wouldn't have to pay any employee taxes.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Any recross?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Pentito, I believe you have the checks in front of you. Could you please read the memo on the first line of the first check?
Yes, it says reimbursement for chips.
Thank you, Mr. Pentito. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Pentito. Any other witnesses on behalf of the prosecution?
The prosecution rests, Your Honor.
Is the defense ready to call its first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Mr. Tay Sullivan Magnum to the stand. May I proceed, Your Honor?
May.
Please state your name and age for the court.
My name is Tay Sullivan Magnum. I'm 33 years old.
What is your occupation, Mr. Magnum?
I am a private investigator. I specialize in employee theft and embezzlement.
How did you become a private investigator?
Well, I had been a police officer for 10 years, and then I decided to work for myself as a private investigator, and I've been doing that for about 5 years now.
Could you describe your time as a police officer?
Yes, I attended the police academy right after high school, and then I went to work on for the Idaho State Police Department for a decade.
Now that you're a private investigator, do you have the same rights that you did as a police officer?
Oh, no, ma'am. No, we do not. We cannot arrest, get search warrants, or obtain any information illegally. Despite what you may see on television, we gotta follow the rules like everyone else.
What would you say your goal is as a private investigator?
The goal is to always find the truth. If my client turns out to be a criminal, it would be my duty to report him to the authorities.
Now, Mr. Magnum, are you familiar with today's case?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
How?
I was hired a while back by Kingsley Ford to perform an independent investigation of this here case.
Did you?
Yes, ma'am, I did. Although it was more of a pro bono situation.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Kingsley Ford could not afford to pay what I normally charge for my services. So I agreed to give him a heavily reduced fee to interview all the relevant parties.
Who did you interview first?
I first interviewed Mr. Rowan Pentito, Ford's former business partner.
And how did you conduct Mr. Pentito's interview?
I did it the same way I had been trained to, and I had been doing in my past 15 years of experience. I observed I observed his behavior, and I looked for testimony issues.
How do you observe behavior?
Well, we were trained to, and in my experience, we look at the normal demeanor, the demeanor of the interviewed suspect when asked easy, rudimentary questions. And then we observe the new behavior when asked a bit harder, behavior-provoking questions, mainly questions that might implicate them in the crime.
Why do you do that?
Well, these questions are intended to elicit different verbal and non-verbal responses.
Can you explain for the jury what you mean by verbal and nonverbal responses?
Yes, ma'am. Verbal, as in what they tell me directly through their words, and nonverbal, as in body language, eye contact, rate of blinking, speaking, breathing, any and all physical signs.
What do these physical signs show you?
These signs determine whether or not the interviewed suspect is telling the truth or not. From my experience, liars typically either maintain firm eye contact the entire time or none at all. They also tend to have very inconsistent breathing patterns. They blink very haphazardly and very inconsistent rate of speaking.
Now, earlier you also mentioned testimony issues. What do you mean by that?
It's all about consistency. The details. Are they consistent, and are they shifting the blame, and how are they doing that if they are?
So how did your interview of Mr. Pentito go?
Boy, oh boy, I tell you. Mr. Pentito avoided eye contact the entire time. He also had a very, very inconsistent rate of speaking. His rate of blinking was erratic. There was just no consistency.
What did you conclude from this interview?
Based on this interview, Mr. Rowan Pentito showed the characteristics and signs of a liar, which is concerning because from my understanding of the case, Detective Moltisanti and the police had based their conclusions off of what Miss Pentito had said. Excuse me.
What was the next step in your investigation?
Next, I interviewed Mr. Kelly Adams, the Tater Chips supervisor.
What did you learn from Mr. Adams?
He had confirmed in the first place that Rowan had indeed been stealing these chips.
What did you do next?
Next, I interviewed Dr. Auden Vera.
What did you learn from Dr. Vera?
She had affirmed that she had been monitoring and supervising the sophisticated systems business since it had started.
So what was the conclusion of your investigation?
Based on my investigation, everything I found, everything I learned, Rowan Pentito is the only thief. Kingsley had nothing to do with it.
Objection, Your Honor. As to Rule 704B, this has been an expert witness, and he's testifying to the ultimate issue of this case, whether or not Kingsley Ford is guilty, and he is not allowed to give an opinion on that.
Your Honor, I believe that rule applies directly to whether or not the defendant has a mental state, and as such, Mr. Magnan can testify to his conclusions based off of his investigation, his interview of Mr. Pentito, and then his opinion on the ultimate issue, which is admissible.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
Though this witness is not directly saying, he is testifying to the mental state of him erratic and being guilty, and the mental state of Rowan Pentito, as well as saying he is the one who is solely guilty, and he testified to Rowan's mental state. Therefore, it's not allowed.
So I understood your objection to be under 704B, which says in a criminal case, an expert witness must not state an opinion about whether the defendant did or did not have a mental state or condition that constitutes an element of the crime charged or of a defense. And I understood, certainly part of his answer addressed Mr. Ford, but as to Rowan Pentito, why would 704B preclude that?
Well, I would say for Rowan Pentito, that one would just be speculation at that point because he was testifying to Rowan's mental state. But for all his testimony about Kingsley Ford, that still falls under 704B.
Your Honor, may I respond with a speculation objection?
You may.
Mr. Magnum has just testified that he underwent the same training as Detective Moltisanti in the Police Academy and interviewing suspects, in addition to his 15 years in criminal investigations. And as such, he is an expert in interviewing suspects and can testify to his conclusions based on his interview of Mr. Pentito.
Your Honor, may I respond to that? Your Honor, Officer Moltisanti stated an opinion and her beliefs, whereas this witness is testifying to the truthfulness, which no foundation was laid that he had training to be able to determine someone's truthfulness for certain.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
The purpose of interviewing a suspect is to determine whether or not they're telling the truth. And as Mr. Magnum has just testified, he is able to do that based off of the interviewed suspect's body language and testimony. And as such, can testify to his conclusions.
All right. So I will sustain the objection as to the comments about Mr. Ford. And will only allow the witness to testify as to, which I think the witness already has, his observations of Rowan Pentito in terms of his responses to questions and things of the like. So
Your Honor, I ask that any testimony about Kingsley Ford be stricken from the record.
that is granted. Yes, and if that wasn't clear, let me know in terms of my ruling. But yes, go ahead and proceed.
Mr. Magnum, what do you conclude about Mr. Pentito?
Based on my investigation, Mr. Pentito is the only thief.
Thank you, Mr. Magnum. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed?
You may.
Mr. Magnum, you were only a cop for 5 years, is that right?
I have been a police officer for 10 years.
And as a PI, you received no formal training, is that correct?
There's really no training for a private investigation, but I did have quite a bit of training from when I was a police officer.
So that's a yes. When you became a private investigator, you received no training?
There is no training for private investigation.
And you were hired by Kingsley Ford?
That's right.
And you took, as stated on direct, you took this job at a discount, is that right?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
And is this usual business practice for you, to discount customers?
Oh, no, not at all. That would not pay the bills at all.
So you decided that Kingsley was special enough that you needed to discount?
Well, yeah, Kingsley Ford obviously was very invested in this case, and I saw that and decided to give him the discount.
And he also couldn't financially afford to hire you, is that correct?
To my knowledge, yes.
And you guys met at the garage which housed sophisticated systems, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And that is where you first talked to Kingsley, is that right?
Well, I mean, he obviously had to reach out to me to get the meeting.
Yes, so that's a yes, you did meet with him there.
Yes, I did meet with him there.
And you stated that the garage was disorganized, a mess.
Oh yeah, it did seem to be quite a mess.
And also that Kingsley didn't have all the proper paperwork for the computer processors, is that right?
I don't believe so. I believe that those had been seized by the police.
And you then conducted interviews, is that right?
That's correct.
And you interviewed Rowan first, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And you stated that you believe Rowan was the only individual with motive, is that right?
She was the only individual with motive, means, and opportunity.
Now let's go back to the motive. Were you aware that Kingsley was under the same financial stress as Rowan Pentito?
You could maybe say that. I do not know.
You didn't know, even though you had to give for this case, as you stated, pro bono?
Well, I do not know if it was the exact same financial state.
But you were aware that it was a large financial pressure she was under?
From my understanding, yes.
And you knew Adrian Moltisanti was involved in this case, is that right?
At first, I did not know that.
But you quickly learned that, is that correct?
Eventually, I did find out.
You learned this because she was the lead investigator, is that right?
I believe so, yes.
And you have a history in Adrian Moltisanti, is that right?
We did used to work together on the force.
And you even left the police force because of Adrian. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor, this is improper character evidence.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Amen.
Your Honor, this goes to show bias, and it's not going to show a particular action at any one time, but it's rather just going to show the bias that this witness has against Adrian Moltisanti, and therefore it is not inappropriate.
I believe the question is whether the witness left the force because of Adrian. I don't think that involves at this point any impermissible character evidence, so I will overrule the objection.
I'll restate the question.
Please.
And you left the police force because of Adrian, is that correct?
That was one of the reasons, yes.
But would you say one of the main ones?
Yeah, it was one of the reasons.
Now, it kind of seems like you have a vendetta against him and you took this case to get back at Adrian. Am I reading that correctly?
No,
So you have no hard feelings towards Adrian at all?
I didn't say that. I mean, I hadn't seen Adrian for a while now, so I would not know.
But would you still say that you have negative feelings towards Adrian?
Yeah, maybe a few.
And you were surprised that Detective Moltisanti believed Roman, weren't you?
Yes, based on what I had seen in my interview with Mr. Pentito, I could not believe, because she had the same training I did.
And you believed that this was just another one of Adrian's shortcuts, didn't you?
Yeah, she was known to take shortcuts.
Let me ask you, is going on a 7-month operation a shortcut?
That was one of the shortcuts. I wouldn't say that 7 months was a shortcut, but
But you believe this operation was a shortcut?
it could definitely be inferred.
But your investigation was much shorter than 7 months, wasn't it?
Yes.
And yet you still believe Moltisanti was the one taking shortcuts.
Shortcuts doesn't necessarily mean a shorter amount of time. It's to make things easier.
So you think finding the ringleader of a crime is taking the easy path rather than convicting the first person who walks through your door?
There's obviously there's a system to finding out such a thing, and I don't believe the police or Detective Moltisanti had taken the right steps in it.
Now moving on to other interviews you conducted, you would describe your interview with Dr. Vera as brief, wouldn't you?
Yes, it was shorter than the rest.
And this was because you'd taken this job at a discount, wasn't it?
Well, that was one of the reasons. Also, there was just no need to.
And there was no need to because you'd already made up your mind, isn't that correct?
What I had concluded was Rowan was the thief, which was already from that interview, and which was already concluded before I even started my investigation.
But you had already concluded this before the investigation, before your interview with Dr. Vera.
I didn't have to conclude that, but that was already common knowledge before I was even hired.
Yes or no, did you know that Dr. Vera was a key investor and advisor in sophisticated systems?
Yes, I did.
You did?
Yes?
So it's your testimony today that you did know that Dr. Vera was a key investor in sophisticated systems?
Yes, ma'am.
And you promised when you wrote your witness testimony to include all relevant information, didn't you?
All relevant information that was apparent at the time, yes.
Yes, but you failed to include that fact, didn't you?
I thought that was common knowledge.
So you failed to include the fact that is extremely relevant because you believed it to be common knowledge?
Well, whether it's relevant is not for me to determine.
So you didn't determine the information that went into your testimony was if it was relevant or not?
Oh, no, I put everything I thought was relevant into my testimony. That's
So
how
then you
that
also
works.
determined that was not relevant. Is that correct?
It wasn't very important, I don't think.
So in the end, you made your conclusion after a couple of interviews and missing paperwork. Is that correct?
I interviewed a few people and I looked at the evidence seized by the police and I investigated the workshop.
But you stated that there was missing paperwork, right?
Oh, yes, there was missing paperwork.
So therefore, you did make your conclusion only after a few interviews and missing paperwork.
Missing paperwork and looking at all the evidence provided to me.
So that's a yes.
With my stipulations, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. No, Mr. Magnum, again, what did you observe of Mr. Pentito?
Again, I observed through my interview with Mr. Pentito that he showed the many characteristics and signs of a liar.
Thank you, Mr. Magnum. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor.
All right. May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
Next witness for the defense.
The defense calls Kingsley Ford to the stand. May I proceed?
You may.
Please state your name and age for the court.
My name is Kingsley Ford. I'm 23 years old.
And what do you do for a living, Mr. Ford?
Well, up until recently, I owned a business known as Sophisticated Systems.
What did Sophisticated Systems do?
We were a computer refurbishing company, so we took computers that were not working at the time, we got new parts for them, and then we sold them at lower prices.
Did you run this business alone?
No, so I ran the business side of this company, but I had a partner, his name was Rowan Pentito, and he was a computer science major.
And how well did your company do initially?
Oh, it went excellent. It was going very fine.
And what did you do with your profits?
Well, as you should do with any business, if you want it to survive, especially when it's this young, you have to put the revenue or the profits right back into the system just to keep it going along to be sustainable.
Now, we've heard today that your business went through COVID. How did this end up affecting you?
Well, COVID-19 was both a blessing and a curse. It was a blessing in the way that the university went online, and so a lot of college students needed good working computers that they could use. That provided us clients and a lot of revenue. It was a curse in the way that it messed with the supply chain.
The supply chain? What do you mean by that?
Well, if you remember from COVID, things like toilet paper, which were normally very common things, suddenly became harder to get and more expensive. The same thing happened with CPUs.
Were you still able to get CPUs at this time?
Yes, we were still buying from multiple companies. And actually, at the time, Rowan Petito was working for a local computer chip distributing company.
Were you able to purchase chips from carriers?
Yes, so that is one of the ways we were able to keep getting CPUs and keep up with the large amount of orders we were getting.
Can you walk us through your role of purchasing these chips?
So I ran the financial side of the business. My job was simply to reimburse Rowan with the checks. His job was to not only work at Tater Chips and get that employee discount, but then to buy the Tater Chips with those discounts.
Now, witness already testified that you ran the financial side of the business. If this is true, why weren't you the one purchasing the chips with your chips?
So I couldn't have purchased them because I wasn't an employee and I wouldn't have got the discount. And at the time, the higher end Tater Chips were about $1,500. Even at the lower end, they were $250. So we really couldn't afford to be buying them at any base price.
Now, Mr. Ford, we've heard today that these chips were actually stolen. When did you find out about this?
I didn't find out any of these chips had been stolen until I was arrested.
Arrested? Why was that?
I was arrested because my partner, Roland Pentito, someone I trusted enough to start an entire business with, invest months of my life into going towards this vision, not only stole chips from Tater Chips, but turned around and said that I was forcing him to do it.
Objection, Your Honor, is to hearsay. This is an out-of-court statement being given for the truth of the matter asserted.
Response?
Your Honor, we are not offering the statement expressive of the truth of the matter, rather for the effect it had on the police's actions and how why Mr. Ford is here testifying today.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
I believe this witness cannot testify as to what effect this comment had on the police's actions. And the police have already testified and sat down, so he cannot give this statement for that reason.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
When someone is arrested, it's a requirement in the police to tell them why it's arrested. And as the police are party opponent to Mr. Ford, he can testify as to what they told him, including the statement that Mr. Pentito blamed him for the thefts.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
I believe this witness is quoting Mr. Pentito, who is not the party opponent, so this statement cannot be entered under that exception.
You want to respond? Mr. Pentito's statement was under the other exception I mentioned.
I will allow the witness just to testify as to his understanding of why he was arrested and who made the accusations against him without specifically repeating any statement by Rowan.
Mr. Ford, would you like me to ask a question again?
Sure.
Now, without repeating any statement that Mr. Pentito directly said, do you know why you were arrested?
I was arrested because Roland Pentito, my partner, not only stole chips from Tater Chips, but blamed the entire thing on me.
Now, Mr. Ford, do you have any evidence that you were actually reimbursing Roland for these chips all along?
Yes, we were using these checks right here, and I kept them in order to use them as records.
And do you know how much the chips you were buying would cost?
Now, these chips, as I had mentioned earlier, at the largest scale would have been at $1,500, but we were able to get them for $187.50.
Objection, Your Honor, this is speculation. This witness is testifying as to a price range of chips from Tater Chips that there's no foundation that he would know as to the prices of Tater Chips.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
Foundation has been laid that Mr. Ford ran the financial side of the business. And as he was expressly in charge of reimbursing Roland for these chips, he would have adequate and extensive knowledge of how much these chips would cost.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
Foundation has also been laid that it was Rowan who was in charge of this interaction, actually purchasing the chips. So this witness still does not have knowledge of the price range of chips that Tater Chips has.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Well, I'm going to overrule the objection because there was earlier testimony from this witness without objection about the price range for the chips.
Now, Mr. Ford, do you know how much the chips you're buying would cost?
The chips I was buying at the lowest end would have cost $250. We were getting the employee discount from Rowan, so they only cost us $187.50 per CPU.
Your Honor, I ask the next approach the witness with what has been marked as Exhibit 1 to refresh the witness's memory.
Go ahead. Just show opposing counsel. And is there any objection to that?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe this witness has not said that he's forgotten anything and has actually, with certainty, responded to the question. So this is an improper refreshing of the witness's memory.
Response to the objection.
Your Honor, if the witness, I can lay foundation that the witness could use this exhibit to refresh his memory.
I will sustain the objection.
Mr. Ford, do you know what this exhibit is?
But without him looking at the exhibit, he needs to indicate that he needs his recollection refreshed.
Mr.
I
Ford,
think that was the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Mr. Ford, do you know the exact amount of chips for that each check is reimbursing?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Your Honor, I ask that the witness may refresh his memory using Exhibit 1.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. This witness just previously testified as to an exact amount, $187.50. So I believe he has answered this question.
Your Honor, this exhibit is not going to refresh the witness's memory of how much the chips cost, rather how many chips each check is for.
I still feel that this witness has said he forgot how many chips, or what the price was, so this is still improper.
I will overrule the objection.
Mr. Ford, if you could read to yourself the column about chips missing and the column about who was in charge of that order to find out how many chips were Rowan's orders missing during that time. Now, Mr. Ford, let's look at that first check. What is the date on it?
The date would have been April 14th, 2021.
And do you now know how many chips were Rowan's orders?
Objection, Your Honor, is improper refreshing. This witness is reading into evidence something off of this document, which is not the proper conduct for refreshing memory.
Your Honor, the witness has not shown the jurors the exhibit, rather he has just used it to refresh his memory of something he already knew in the past. This for is a completely adequate refreshing memory.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
First, can I be reminded which exhibit is this?
Exhibit 1.
Then I believe he also does not have proper knowledge of this exhibit, since this is a record of tater chips that are missing, and only Adrian Moltisanti and Kelly Adams would have knowledge of this. So this witness is not forgotten. He simply never knew around this time what chips were missing from which shipments.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Briefly.
It is true that this witness does not have knowledge of this particular exhibit, which is why I'm not entering into evidence under it. Rather, it merely contains information that this witness knew in the past, i.e., which chips Rowan brought in during the time period.
May I respond, Your Honor? This exhibit contains the dates that the chips went missing. He would not have knowledge of this, and no foundation has been laid that he was aware of the exact dates Rowan brought them in. So he still cannot read off a date from this exhibit.
Your Honor, the witness was reading off a date from Exhibit 2, which has already been entered into evidence.
But Exhibit 1 is a document that admission was denied, and the witness doesn't have any relationship with developing, is my understanding.
So what is the opposing counsel objecting to exactly? The dates?
That this document, Exhibit 1, isn't something that the witness has any familiarity with. The witness didn't prepare it. The document is not in evidence. So there's no ability for this witness to make connections between the numbers on this document and Exhibit 2. I think that's the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, if this document indeed contains information which this witness knew in the past, then he is able to use it to refresh his memory.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Ford, without using that exhibit, can you try to recall how many missing chips Rowan brought you before the date on that first check?
Before that time, Rowan would have brought me 4 chips.
And do you know how much 4 chips would have been at your discount price?
Well, 4 chips at $187.50 each would have been $750.
And can you read for the jury the amount on that first check?
It's for $750.
And who was this check made out for?
This was made for Rowan Pentito.
And what is the memo line?
Reimbursement for chips.
Let's see about the second check as well. What is the date on that?
May 18th, 2021.
And not counting the 4 chips we just talked about, do you know how many chips this check was made out for?
This would have been for 6 chips.
And what would have 6 chips been in your discount price?
Well, 6 chips at $187.50 would have been $11.25.
And can you read for the jury the amount on that second check?
It's $11.25.
And who was this check made out for?
Rowan Pentito.
And what is the memo line?
Chips.
And did you pay Rowan this exact discount price for all the chips that he brought you?
Yes, all of them.
And how much in these checks did you end up reimbursing Rowan Pentito for?
I reimbursed Mr. Pentito for a little over $4,000.
And was this a large part of the company's budget?
No, at the time, because we were still reinvesting our profits into the system, we had about a $78,000 budget that we were working with for buying the parts we needed. This was only a small fraction of that.
Now, Mr. Ford, did you ask Rowan Pentito to steal the chips?
No. No. First of all, the given is that stealing is wrong, but on top of that, that wouldn't have benefited our company at all.
Why not?
First of all, I was still reimbursing Rowan for the chips. So whether or not she was stealing them, I would be making no money from that. On top of that, we had a $78,000 budget, and that was only part of what we wanted. We were trying to get to hundreds of thousands, a $1 million vision for our company, and I wouldn't have risked all of that for a little more than $4,000.
Now, Mr. Ford, what effect has Rowan's thefts had on your business?
Because of what Rowan did, I lost my entire company. The police seized everything that wasn't nailed down, the computer chips that we made, therefore all the money we had been reinvesting into our system, months and months of work and sacrifice to get to this, and we lost all of that.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Class?
Yes, Your Honor.
May I proceed? Now, you testified on direct that these chips were $187.50. Is that right?
Yes.
But you never concluded this in your statement, did you?
No, I believe that is part of the reason why we took judicial notice of this.
So that's a yes, you didn't include this in your statement?
No,
And you also testified that you were in charge of the business side of things. Is that right?
that's correct.
And that included things like writing the checks to Rowan's for reimbursement.
Yes.
And you also testified on direct that you were in charge. Moving on. So you used Tater Chips processors in your computers, right?
Yes, we did.
And those are the ones that you reimbursed Rowan for?
Yes, I reimbursed Rowan for buying the tater chips with the discounted price.
And I believe you have Exhibit 2 in front of you.
I do.
First, could you read the memo line on the third check?
It says Tuna Helper Fund.
And these were professional checks, right?
Professional in that I was giving them to my business partner, but
For reimbursing for chips.
still for reimbursing.
And these are the checks that you wrote to Rowan, yes?
Yes.
Could you read the date of the last reimbursement check?
October 19th, 2021.
Now, you sold Moldesanti a laptop that contained a chip, correct?
Correct.
And that chip was put in there in September, right?
I believe so.
And you kept getting chips from Rowan after August, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And you're aware that there were a limit on how many chips Rowan could receive, correct?
I don't believe so.
You were not aware of any limit?
No, again, I'm not buying the chips. I'm reimbursing Rowan for buying the chips.
So you never clarified with Rowan if there was a max number of chips he could purchase?
No, and again, we're trying to get a good amount, but we're trying to keep our business afloat. We're not just trying to grab every possible chip known to mankind.
To be clear, you were behind on prepaid orders, yes?
Yes, and that's something that happens in business sometimes. Orders come in. COVID-19 was messing with a lot of independent businesses, and so we were just trying to survive.
But redirecting you back to my question, you were missing deadlines for prepaid orders, is that right?
Yes, that was when our company started struggling.
And before you were arrested, Rowan stopped coming to work, correct?
That is correct.
And you never asked Rowan to return to work, did you?
No, because she was working at Tater Chips at the time, and so we had already figured a system out, and me and Adrian Moltisanti were working fine at the business at the time being.
And this system involved you taking over Rowan's part of the work, is that right?
Yes, a little bit. I wasn't a computer science major, so I could only do so much.
But that so much involved putting together computers?
The best I could, yes.
So let's talk about your company. It was your dream to be involved in business, right?
That's correct.
That's why you founded Sophisticated Systems in your sophomore year of college?
Yes, it is.
And that's also why you insisted that you and Rowan pour every cent back into your company, correct?
Yes, and that's, again, a common practice to provide sustainability.
So to be clear, you and Rowan had no income stream from Sophisticated Systems, right?
No, we were not taking profits out. We were still making money, but we were reinvesting it. It's not the same as not making money.
So to be clear, you did not have any income stream from this company?
No profits, no.
And you also took out a $50,000 loan at this time, is that right?
That is correct.
And that was at a 7.87% interest rate?
Yes.
And you and Rowan had no other income stream when you took out this loan, is that right?
Yes.
And when COVID hit, that's when you started taking the advance payments, correct?
Correct.
And that's when you started missing deadlines for those payments. Is that also correct?
Right. Again, COVID-19 messed with many, many companies. It messed with a lot of large companies, so it had a very, very large effect on our small independent one that we were running in a garage.
So yes, you're aware that your small independent company was under threat of failing?
Yes.
And now I believe you have Exhibit 6 in front of you. You were here in court today when Adrian Moltisanti testified, correct?
Yes, I was.
And Adrian Moltisanti testified that this packing slip was found at Sophisticated Systems, right?
Yes, it was.
Had you ever seen this document before?
No.
You had not?
No.
And you went through all of the paperwork with Adrian Moltisanti, is that correct?
I believe I went over most of the paperwork with Adrian Moltisanti. I can't testify as to how much of it.
And Sophisticated Systems was selling computers using tater chip CPUs, right?
Yes.
And you would say that you kept up with your paperwork pretty well, yes?
I'd say we were keeping up with paperwork to the best of our abilities, but I will admit there was a lot of it, and I can't say that I kept track of every single piece of paperwork.
So let's look at that a little closer. You had learned in business class that it's important to keep up with such paperwork, right?
That's correct.
And that's for tax purposes?
Yes.
And you also hope to get a larger loan for Sophisticated Systems, is that right?
Yes. Again, we had a vision we were working towards, and so we didn't want to settle at something like $10,000 or even $100,000. We wanted to go as large as we could.
And that would require accurate financial records, right?
Yes, which is why we were having the checks at the time working for records, and we simply just didn't need receipts or anything like that at the time.
You didn't need receipts for your paperwork?
I wasn't saying that I didn't need receipts for my paperwork at any time. It was just at the time, especially before I was arrested, we didn't need these receipts.
So yes or no, would you say that you needed receipts from the purchases you made?
I would say at the time, no, I didn't need them. On top of the fact that I had the checks acting as records, I actually trusted my partner, trusted enough to start a multi-million-dollar company with, and trusted them enough to have receipts if I needed them.
And you didn't ask for these receipts, correct?
No, for the same reasons that I trusted him and I had the bank checks acting as records.
And it was your plan to write off these as a tax break, correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
It was your plan to write off these purchases as a tax break, correct? That's why you wrote the checks?
I wrote the checks to reimburse Rowan Pentito, and I wanted to keep them in case we needed to deal with that situation. But if I wanted to deal with the tax, I would have asked for the receipts. I just didn't need them at the time.
You didn't feel that you needed the receipts to prove that you were purchasing chips for tax purposes?
Not at the time, no.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Ford, were you using some of your company's profits to pay back the $50,000 loan?
Oh, yes.
And were you able to complete work on the paperwork before you were arrested?
I was not able to.
And we heard Adrian Moltisanti testify today that she managed to find a packing slip with a stolen chip on it. Did he ever show you this packing slip during the course of your paperwork work?
No. Originally, I hired Adrian Moltisanti to help me deal with the messiness of my garage, but when she found that, no, she did not show this to me.
And why didn't you need the receipts at the time?
Because first, we had the checks acting as records. Second, because I trusted my business partner. And third, because we didn't need the receipts from Tater Chips at the time.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Any recross?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Adrian Moltisanti was your intern, correct?
Correct.
And did you oversee all of his actions at Sophisticated Systems?
To the best of my ability, I wasn't constantly watching her.
But you were there whenever she was at Sophisticated Systems?
For the most part, I wouldn't say I was constantly watching her, but I think for the most part, we were working at the same time.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, may this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection to the witness being excused?
No, Your Honor.
Next witness for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Auden Vera to the stand. May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Please state your name and age for the court.
My name is Auden Vera, but my students call me Dr. Vera. I'm 59 years old.
What do you do for a living, Dr. Vera?
Currently, I teach and do research at the University of Idaho. I've been a business professor there since 1995, so 28 years now.
And do you have any qualifications for this position, Doctor?
Yes, dear, I do. I have my doctorate in business administration, but I also have my MBA and my bachelor's in economics.
Dr. Vera, are you familiar with today's defendant, Kingsley Ford?
Yes, dear, I am.
How so?
I had Kingsley in my sophomore level sustainable business management course back maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but I knew him even before that.
Now, we heard testimony today, Doctor, that Mr. Ford started a business called Sophisticated Systems. Were you aware of this?
Yes, I was. Kingsley started the business. He came up with the plan for the business as a project in my sophomore level sustainable business management course.
What did you think of Mr. Ford's project?
It was very, very well thought out. In fact, you could even say it was brilliant.
Why would you say that, Doctor?
What I was really trying to teach the students in my sophomore level course is the fact that a business can be very profitable and also very good for the environment at the same time. Kingsley's business really exemplified this. It had the potential to be very profitable, but it was also very, very sustainable.
Did you help Mr. Ford with his business?
Yes. When Kingsley decided to take the business to the real world as a real business, I volunteered to help him on that.
What did that help look like?
I advised him on the business, but then I also put a small monetary investment into the business.
What do you mean by that monetary investment?
I invested just $300 into the business to try to help the business get going and encourage Kingsley. I invested it in the form of future stock options.
And is it unusual for you to do this for a student?
Oh no, dear, not at all. I invest in quite a few of my students' business projects to try to help the younger generation start new businesses and get out into the world of business.
You mentioned you gave Mr. Ford advice as well. What did that advice look like?
I advised Kingsley on his business plans and practices, so the technical decisions of a business.
And what sort of advice did you give him exactly?
At one point, I advised him to take out a $50,000 loan for the business because he was coming up on a time of a lot of demand and he needed to be able to take advantage of that.
And how often did you give advice like this to Mr. Ford?
Once a week.
How long had you been teaching Mr. Ford before this?
I taught him for a semester in his sophomore year.
For today, Dr. Vera, Mr. Ford was arrested for theft. Did you know about this?
Yes, honey, I did.
What was your reaction when you found out about this?
I was absolutely shocked. What they're trying to say that Kingsley did today isn't at all like the Kingsley that I've known.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Might I ask how much time I have remaining to cross? Hopefully not 15 seconds.
You have, let me do some math real quick. 4 minutes and 10 seconds.
Permission to proceed, Your Honor? Dr. Vera, you thought that Kingsley's business idea was such a good idea that you would put some of your own money into the company, correct?
Oh, yes, dear. I invested $300 into the business.
Yes, and as you stated on direct, you've done this with many other students before, correct?
Yes, I do this quite frequently.
And speaking of this investment, you had to agree to a conflict of interest waiver anytime you wanted to invest, correct?
Oh, yes, I always do that to make sure that my investment into the business is free of conflict of interest.
Yes, and this waiver is issued by the University of Idaho anytime you want to invest, correct?
Yes, it is.
And did the board approve the request you made for sophisticated systems?
Yes, dear, they did.
Let the record reflect that I am approaching opposing counsel with a clean and unmarked copy of Exhibit 7. Permission to approach the witness?
You may.
Thank you.
Do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
This is the letter I got back from the board after I asked them if I could invest in Kingsley's business.
And does this appear to be a fair and accurate representation of the waiver you received for Kingsley's business?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I ask that Exhibit 7 be admitted into evidence.
Any response?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 7 will be admitted.
Dr. Vera, after you made the investment in sophisticated systems, did you advertise Kingsley's product to students in your class, yes or no?
No, I did not.
So it is your testimony today that you did not go and tell them to go buy Phoenix laptops?
When I was asked by students in my class if I had any recommendations about where they could buy cheaper computers for their projects, I did recommend that Kingsley's business was a good place to buy cheap, sustainable computers, but I definitely would not call it advertising.
Oh, so you recommended for them to go buy the laptops from Kingsley?
I recommended that Kingsley's business was a good business to try to buy from because the laptops were cheap.
Please read the third bullet point under the conflict of interest restrictions, starting with you will refrain.
You will refrain from advertising or promoting the business or its products or services to university employees or students, whether on or off campus.
So the fact that you recommended the business to students in your class went against the code of ethics waiver you agreed to, didn't it?
No, I wouldn't say that. I recommended the business to the students to try to help them. I wouldn't call it advertising or promoting. I wasn't putting up billboards or handing out flyers.
But isn't promoting recommendation and synonymous?
No, I wouldn't say that.
And to be clear, in addition to being Ford's business advisor, aren't you also on the honor board?
Yes, I'm on the University of Idaho Honors Board, so I look into allegations of cheating and other misconduct.
And you also personally advised Kingsley in regards to his company, correct?
Yes, I did. I advised him once a week on the business.
And so you were supposed to be giving reliable advice to Kingsley.
Yes.
But after a while, Kingsley stopped staying in contact with you, correct?
Yes, I believe in December of 2021, Kingsley and I stopped contacting each other.
So did you see this as unusual?
No, I didn't.
Are you saying it's normal for a student to stop listening to a reliable advisor such as yourself?
Well, I wouldn't say that. Well, here's the deal. I know college students are very, very busy, so I don't expect Kingsley to always contact me. He did stop contacting me, but I figured he was busy because he was trying to start a new business.
Isn't it true from past experience with students that this usually means there's something going wrong with their business?
Sometimes that is the case, but I don't think that really applies to Kingsley's business.
So is that a yes from past experience? This usually means that there's something going wrong with their business?
Sometimes that is true, yes.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right. Anything further from the defense?
Your Honor, the defense rests.
All right. And may this witness then be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Would the teams like 3 minutes to prepare their closing arguments?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. If you can, timekeepers, start the timer, please.
Your Honor.
You may. All right, looks like time is up. Prosecution ready to proceed with its closing argument.
Yes, Your Honor. And before I proceed, I'd like to request that I save any remaining time for rebuttal.
You may. You may.
Your Honor, members of the jury, facts do not cease to exist because they're ignored. Throughout the course of today's trial, you've heard numerous excuses from Kingsley Ford. The defense has claimed that he couldn't have known the chips were stolen. But remember that willful ignorance is not an excuse. Today, according to jury instruction 6, we, the prosecution, have the burden of proving, beyond reasonable doubt, that Kingsley Ford knowingly sold chips rightfully owned by Tater Chips, either knowing that they were stolen or under such circumstances that he should have known. You will see that we have met this burden of proof. Let's start with how Kingsley Ford knew these chips were stolen. Kingsley Ford forced Rowan to steal these chips to put in their computers. It's clear from the evidence that the combined weight of the $50,000 loan, the failing of their company, and the lack of personal income made Kingsley desperate to save his company, and fast. That's why, as soon as Rowan got a side job delivering computer processors, Kingsley's next move was clear. Rowan needed to steal. You heard from Rowan himself today how Kingsley told him to steal, to save sophisticated systems, and to save himself. He then did the same calculations you heard the defense do in court, to line up the same numbers, to make it look like he was paying him back for rightfully purchased chips. Kingsley told you the records needed to be clean. That is why he did the same calculations to cover his tracks. It was the perfect crime. Get free chips and get a scapegoat in the form of Rowan to throw blame on in case anyone questioned his crimes. However, even if we have not convinced you that Kingsley Ford knew these chips were stolen, you must still convict if you find that he should have known. It is impossible that Kingsley Ford did not know these chips were stolen. A reasonable business owner would have been aware of so many points in this interaction that Kingsley Ford claims to be oblivious to. For example, Sophisticated Systems was so desperate for chips, they were missing prepaid order deadlines. But did Kingsley push Rowan on the max number of chips they could purchase? No. And that is because there was no above-the-board deal with Tater Chips to purchase chips. Kingsley claimed in court that he felt he didn't need the receipts. He knew they were required for tax purposes, but he also knew that you can't ask for something that's not there. Kingsley told you that the last check came in August, but you heard from Rowan and Kingsley that chips kept coming after this last reimbursement was paid, including a chip sold to Officer Moltisanti that was placed in the laptop in September. If that isn't enough, even when Rowan refused to produce receipts, which Kingsley knew were required, Kingsley, who had been good about collecting paperwork before, didn't even ask for them. These red flags are impossible to ignore, and no matter how much the defense tries to explain them away, willful ignorance is not an excuse. In the case of the United States versus Jewell, the court found that proof of willful ignorance satisfies the burden for knowledge, so the defense cannot claim this. Officer Moltisanti investigated for 7 months, and she found the truth. Even Magnum told the court that 7 months is not a shortcut, and his own investigation was based on short interviews and a much shorter investigation. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have seen Kingsley's character, and you have seen the people who Kingsley was advised by. You heard in court today Kingsley's mentor, Dr. Vera, twist the word promote and advertise, just like Kingsley twisted the word reimburse. And it's for this reason we ask you to find Kingsley Ford guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Closing argument for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury, Ms. Brown just got up here and told you that the truth never changes, that facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. Members of the jury, today the prosecution has ignored the numbers. But the truth is in the numbers. Now, in today's case, the prosecution has the burden of proof. They must prove that my client, Mr. Kingsley Ford, either knew or should have known that the chips he got from Mr. Pentito were stolen. The prosecution must prove that beyond a reasonable doubt. That means that if there is any reasonable doubt in your mind that my client knew or should have known, you must find him not guilty. So that's the prosecution's burden. But did they meet it? Members of the jury, no one today denies that the chips were stolen. Mr. Pentito himself admitted that much. The real question is whether my client knew about it. So what did we hear from Mr. Ford today? Mr. Ford told you a simple story. His business, Sophisticated Systems, needed CPUs. And his business partner, Mr. Pentito, got a job at a CPU distributing company. As you heard from Mr. Kelly Adams, as you heard from Mr. Kingsley Ford, as you heard from Mr. Pentito himself, he had a 25% discount at the company. As far as my client was aware, Mr. Pentito would purchase the chips, and then Sophisticated Systems would reimburse him for the chips that he bought. It was simple, and it was cost-effective. Members of the jury, you don't have to take my client's word for it either. Because we have each and every check that Mr. Ford paid Mr. Pentito with. As you heard today, each and every one of these checks matches exactly what the 25% discount on those chips would have been. It makes no sense. No sense at all. If my client was trying to steal the chips, he was still paying the exact same amount of money. To the jury, the truth is in these checks. The truth is in the numbers. The truth is, Mr. Ford did not know that these chips were stolen. But should Mr. Ford have known that these chips were stolen? Members of the jury, the prosecution told you today about all the red flags. But Officer Moltisanti tried to hide the red flags from Mr. Ford. He tried to hide the packing slip that she found there. Members of the jury, Mr. Pentito was my client's business partner. They started Sophisticated Systems together. Spent thousands of hours over the course of 3 years to build it together. They even went in on a $50,000 loan together. Why would my client suspect his business partner, of all people, to lie, to steal, to put at risk everything they worked for? Mr. Ford trusted Mr. Pentito, and Mr. Pentito betrayed him. The prosecution has found no evidence today that Mr. Ford knew or should have known. The only thing they've been able to find today is the testimony of Mr. Pentito. The testimony of a thief. The testimony of a man who will face no consequences for his crimes. Because he testified against my client. Members of the jury, the prosecution has failed their burden. Mr. Ford didn't know. It would not be reasonable to assume that he should know. And that's because the truth is in Mr. Ford's actions. The truth is in these checks. The truth is in the numbers. The numbers never lie. So today, the defense asks that you find Mr. Ford not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Rebuttal.
Yes, Your Honor. But before I proceed, if I had been allowed to object, I would have objected to facts, not evidence, that it never came out in court that the packing slip was never given to the defense.
Objection is noted.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
We heard Mr. Ford get up here today and say that that the packing slip was never shown to him by an officer. So.
Thank you. You may proceed with your rebuttal.
Today, the defense has claimed that Kingsley did not know about the chip thefts. You heard them claim that the truth is in the numbers. And it's true. The numbers appear to line up. But remember, Rowan wasn't going to steal for free. So Kingsley cleverly paid him with the exact amounts the defense has shown you. Line up in order to orchestrate the perfect cover and claim ignorance. They also told you in opening that Kingsley had a vision. But that vision was of his company failing, his finances going into bankruptcy, and his future dimming. Kingsley told you sophisticated systems was missing prepaid deadlines and upsetting customers. And yet he never pushed Rowan on the max number of chips. And that's because he was only paying Rowan for whatever he could get that week. Kingsley also told you the checks end in August. But he didn't question and he kept getting chips without paying. Kingsley thought he was reimbursing Rowan for purchasing chips, but the chips kept coming, which is why we ask you to find him guilty.
All right, thank you. Great job, everyone. A round of applause. Take a few minutes so the scoring judges can make sure their ballots are in and the teams can identify their star attorney on witness for the opposing team.
Your Honor, at this time I'd like to thank the jury and yourself for presiding today.
Thank you. And I would like to thank your teachers and coaches and family who are here to support you, and the mock trial staff at the Idaho Law Foundation. We'll take a few minutes. Oh, thank you.
Okay.
You both have 4 points.
The witnesses said, hey, can I just go ahead and get closed? I have no idea what which one it is.
guy who
Closing attorney?
Start with LBY.
So for star attorney, we said Zach. Star witness, we said Luke.
On behalf of Team FPB, I'd like to present the Star Attorney Award to Ms. Caroline Brown.
I'd like to award the Star Witness Award to Fiona Bothwell.
And I think we'll just do a few comments from the judging panel. So we'll start with Zach.
Kingsley. I have to call you Kingsley, I don't know your real name. I forgot. You did a superb job. You, and maybe I'm partial, I helped write Kingsley Ford's statement. But you acted just like a defendant would. You were almost flawless. I was blown away, so thank you.
I've come into this more like a real juror. I was not completely familiar with all the factual nitty-gritties of this case, so I was really reliant on you guys to both prove and defend this matter. I think you guys did an exceptional job. I'm blown away. This is my first time being able to sit on a panel and judge, and you guys did an exceptional job, so I'd like to give you another round of applause. As a third-year law student getting ready to enter the practice, I'd be a little intimidated to across the aisle from you guys. So hats off on that. I think one of the things too that I commend all of you on is your ability to roll with resistance and think on your feet, because that's so tough to do. I mean, we could spend all the time trying to rehearse and practice and prepare, but then you get a wrench thrown in your gears and the brain scrambles and what are we going to do? And I thought all of you guys just did an exceptional job of adjusting. I didn't see you lose your poise at all. You just audible and on to the next thing and away we went. So yeah, you guys did an exceptional job.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to sit here and realize that you're not law students, you're not college students, you're high school students. It truly is exceptional. The technical, and I say that to the witnesses as well, you were all just great. The technical thing that I most admired that both of the teams did, besides objections and dealing with objections, is a little bit esoteric, so bear with me. But it's what I call the don't ask one question too many, where you wait to put it all together in your closing argument. Because a lot of times when you guys know where you're headed with it, right? But as a jury, you're like, I wonder why they're fighting so hard on that or focusing on that. And it takes a lot of discipline and patience for you to not try to fight with the witness to get them to say what you want them to say and have that moment where you're like, yes, I just won the case. You really win in a closing argument, in my opinion. So I thought you all did a really good job, and I understood at the end, in closings, where everything was going. And that is really hard to teach. I've tried coaching, and it's hard to do as a lawyer. So congratulations on that especially. Thank you for all the work and preparation. And I look at this full row that you have of support. So thank you all for being here too.
I would just echo everything that's been said. I mean, the attorneys, you're all excellent. Your knowledge of the rules and your fighting back, not fighting, but you know what I mean, arguing back and forth. I mean, it was really just outstanding. And the witnesses, you all are just, play such an important role in mock trial as well. So, and you all did an outstanding job. I do feel that I also kind of got a Star Witness Award because I wrote Magnum PI and Adrian Moltisan. So thank you for bringing my characters to life. But all of the witnesses were excellent. It's a lot to remember, and you all stayed in your roles, and really great job. So very impressed and happy to participate in this every year. Zach?
The only thing I could say is, like, I was hoping there'd be more tuna cover.
And I was just happy it made an appearance.
All right, you guys good? Well, I just want to start by just saying how great it is to be back in person, right? We did what we could to keep it going, which I think is important, but this is just a different experience, and it's so lovely to be with all of you and see all of your beautiful faces. Just thanks to the teams, thanks to our judges, thanks to our staff and volunteers and the families who are here to support you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to announce the team that's the runner-up team, and I'd like to have a coach come forward and collect the plaque, and then at that point, obviously, we'll know who the winner is, but we'll make sure we give a good round of applause to the team that's the runner-up first, and then announce the team who's our state champion. So, without further ado, this year's runner-up is FPB Logos School Team A. State champions is Team LBY from the Ambrose School. Spend a few minutes coming up here getting team pictures. I would actually like a picture of each team with the plaque, but I know your families will too. So, thank you all for being here and for having such a great season. Thank you. Oh my God.